Intelligent Talk, 1170 KCBQ.
And online at kcbq.com.
Wait till you see what they did to my car.
The machine of a dream. Such a clean machine.
175, 200,000 on the LS6, 200,000.
Beep, 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 yeah. Beep, 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 yeah.
Pull out the 8-track and turn up the AM. It's time for It's All About the Car with me, Dan the Carman Jones, and the godfather of all things automotive, Dave Stahl. Good evening, godfather of all things automotive. How the heck are you, Dave?
Brother, when you told me Avanti. Dude, that's a 4-hour show.
I know, and you're gonna kill me because the history of the Avanti, I narrowed it down to 9 minutes.
How did you do it?
I could have filled the whole show with just the little history piece.
Oh, my God.
It's something. Hey, I always forget to tell people to go to my website because they can see pictures of the car as we're talking about it. So right now is a good time to go to www.itsallaboutthecar.com. You go to the photo gallery and you'll be able to see photos of tonight's car.
Perfect.
Or you can wait until we have the interview with Keith Wall, who owns the Avanti. And he's a very interesting fellow. He's got a number of cars. I had to pick and choose which car I wanted, and this was a sweet ride.
Right.
So we don't have a lot of time. We are going to have another one of those little teaser questions before the break, but let's get right into the Avanti history. I think you're going to find this very interesting, Dave. I know there's some things that you didn't know.
I can't wait.
Avanti, America's only 4-passenger high-performance luxury car. An exciting, distinguished automobile. Different by design, with sleek, fluid lines which express its dependable high-performance capabilities.
In 1961, Studebaker was in trouble. To paraphrase their famous advertising slogan, just ask the men who owned it. The company was over 100 years old. It had transitioned from being a premier carriage and wagon maker, whose products were synonymous with both the westward expansion and the White House mansion, into a premier automotive manufacturer, albeit not at the massive scale of the Big Three. Indeed, up until the 1950s, Studebaker seemed destined for continued success with new plants, new alliances, and continuing innovation. And then the tide turned. By the 1950s, Studebaker's labor costs were growing fast, as Studebaker workers and retirees were among the highest paid in the industry. Margins were shrinking even faster, as Studebaker was trying to compete with price points being dictated by Ford and GM, who were in a price war and had the volume to make that financially feasible. In 1959, there was a brief moment of hope when Studebaker perfectly timed a new market trend with the introduction of the Lark, one of the first of the new breed of compact cars.
This family, with kids and dog as part of the luggage, admire the comfort and convenience of the Lark. From its flat floors to more rear seat room than the big cars, it's the complete answer to what a family needs from its car.
The Lark's jump on the competition was responsible for an increase in sales from roughly 57,000 cars in 1958 to nearly 154,000 cars in 1959, with the Lark accounting for more than 130,000 of those much-needed sales. Finally, after years of slowly bleeding out financially, the 1959 balance sheet closed with a profit of nearly $30 million. Then, in 1960, the Big Three introduced their own versions of the compact car, and sales plummeted. In 1961, Studebaker hired Sherwood Egbert as president, with the corporate goal of diversifying Studebaker and getting the company out of the car-making business. However, once in control of Studebaker, Sherwood Egbert became, to the board's surprise and consternation, a car guy. Egbert was determined to resurrect the automotive portion of the company and needed a flagship model to do it. Only 37 days after becoming president, Egbert sketched out a drawing of a new car, destined to be the salvation of Studebaker. It was to be named Avanti, Italian for forward, and moving forward at a very rapid pace was exactly what he did. Egbert called in Raymond Loewy, one of the most famous designers in America. The goal was to introduce the new car for the 1963 model year, which meant a design cycle of only 40 days. Virtually impossible, unless you were Raymond Loewy, a.k.a. Lucky Ramon. Loewy was indeed up to the challenge. He recruited a design team consisting of his trusty assistant John Epstein, Bob Andrews, and a young man just out of the famous Art Center College of Design, Tom Kellogg. Loewy rented a house for the designers near his own Palm Springs mansion, and the designers started designing. Kellogg, responsible for most of the sketching, later commented that some of the sexiness of the final design could be attributed to the invasion of the bikini-clad co-eds who had invaded Palm Springs for their school's Easter break.
Who put the bomb in the bomb, bomb? Who put the rhyme in the rhyme-a-lama-ding-dong? Who put the bop in the bop, shabop, shabop? Who put the dip in the dip-de-dip-de-dip? Who was that man? I'd like to shake his hand.
Kellogg related, "We'd have to go downtown to eat, and there were all these beautiful girls. We'd come back to our boards in a rather stimulated state." The Loewy team made its 40-day deadline, and the Avanti swung into production. In addition to its revolutionary looks with swoopy lines and a Coke bottle profile, was the notable absence of a front grille. Obsessed with weight, indeed the team labored under a sign that declared weight is the enemy, Loewy had said grills were for sewers, not cars. Not content with just a radical new design, Sherwood Egbert and Loewy also wanted a car with high performance, and not just straight-line muscle car performance, but the handling, braking, and safety of a true state-of-the-art sports car. The Avanti had a built-in roll bar. The interior panels and dash were highly padded. There were front and rear anti-roll bars, and the front disc brakes were standard. In fact, all Avantis were very fully equipped. The interior boasted full instrumentation, including a 6,000 RPM tach and a vacuum gauge. There were bucket seats, a center console, and an aircraft-inspired overhead switch panel. Avantis also boasted 3 ashtrays, internal trunk and hood releases, courtesy and trunk lamps, tinted glass, and variable speed electric windshield wipers. The base engine in the R1 model was a freshened-up version of the venerable Studebaker 289 V8, which made 240 gross horsepower. The R2 added a Paxton supercharger, upping the pony power to 290. Famed hot rodder Andy Granatelli was tasked with putting up the numbers for the new Avanti, which was soon to be claimed as the fastest production car in America.
Bonneville, Utah. A landscape weird as the mountains of the moon. An eerie valley where men and machines pursue the elusive goal of world speed records. Humming over this 12 miles of salt speedway, a daring driver sits in the bucket seat of a Bonneville record breaker. The star of this big effort to clean the slate of stock car speed records is Studebaker's sleek new Avanti from the design studio of Raymond Loewy, built by the craftsmen at Studebaker, skilled vehicle engineers for 111 years. These record assaults are the final tests of the car's safety features.
In April of 1962, a supercharged Avanti hit a top speed of 171 miles per hour. And production Avantis broke 29 speed records at the Bonneville Salt Flats. Production problems, most notably with the sourcing of the fiberglass body, kept Avantis out of the showrooms until late in the model year. Prices reflected its premium product status, with a starting price for an R1 at $4,445, about the same as a Ford Thunderbird Coupe, and nearly $200 more than the new Corvette Stingray. Unfortunately, this last-ditch Hail Mary roll of the dice came up craps for the venerable Studebaker company. By then, the public was well aware of Studebaker's financial problems, and continuing reports that the company was going to abandon the auto business was a self-fulfilling prophecy. In 1962, famed NBC reporter Chet Huntley aired a television program entitled Studebaker, Fight for Survival. Sales of all Studebaker products plummeted. Sherwood Egbert's goal was to produce over 20,000 1963 Avantis. The actual number was 3,834. There was only 809 1964 Avantis, and there were no 1965 Studebaker Avantis. Tonight's guest, Keith Wall, is the lucky and proud owner of a lightly modified 1963 Avanti R1, car number 355. Keith is a member of the Studebaker Drivers Club, San Diego chapter, and he has owned his car for about 4 years. When we come back, we'll get to talk with Keith and get a first-hand account of what it's like to be an Avanti owner.
All right. Hey, you want to go ahead and take a quick early break and then come back?
Yes, let's do that because you're going to want to talk with Keith. And let me tell you, that car is beautiful. You need to go to www.it'sallaboutthecar.com and see the pictures of there in the photo gallery. But yes, let's take a break. And I have a question for you, Dave.
What's that?
I bet you know that Davy Jones passed away.
Yes, I did.
Yes, and that was a sad, sad loss. I'm old enough to remember when the Monkees were on, and it was even better when they went into reruns because then I could really appreciate the music because I'm not that old.
No, not that old. No, not
but anyway,
at all.
there is a San Diego connection to a very important prop for the Monkees TV show. At least I thought it was very important at the time. And we're going to find out exactly what that is and talk to a very special guest when we come back. Do you know what prop I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
Oh, come on.
I know what it is.
Hey,
what is it, Jim?
Don't say it. Don't say it. As we car guys like to say, it's better when you stay tuned.
That's right. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to the Love Network.
We'll ask you when we come back, see if you knew it.
That's right. We got more Avantis and all about the cars right here on KCBQ AM 1170 Intelligent Talk Radio.
Most businesses fail because of lack of capital. Is yours next? Does your business need $10,000, $50,000, even $100,000?
Intelligent Talk, 1170 KCBQ, and streaming on the web
at kcbq.com.
There's a voice in my head that drives my heel.
All right, folks. Hey, welcome back. You're listening to the Love Network. This is All About the Cars, brought to you by West Escondido Auto and Trans, 760-741-0071. You want good quality service in the North County area? West Escondido Auto and Trans. Hey, Hot Rod, who you got in the wings?
Oh, my gosh. Well, first we have to find the answer. Everybody here already knew the... All righty. Well, anyway, we still have to roll it. There might be one person out there in Radio Land that didn't know it. Let's find out about it.
We have with us this evening a very special guest, the godfather of the GTO, Jim Wangers. Now, with that little hint, many of you might have already guessed that the prop in question was the Monkey Mobile, a highly modified GTO. And Jim Wangers, as with most things GTO, was instrumental in making that particular vehicle the Monkey Mobile of choice. So, Jim, how did it come about that the Monkey Mobile, the automotive mascot of one of the hit shows of the 60s, was a GTO?
Well, that wasn't an accident, to be very honest with you. We went way out of our way to make sure that car, when that opportunity came up, was going to be a Pontiac. Dan, I got to tell you that it really came about through a tip we got from the company that was making our scale models. In those days, all of the automakers used to have little model cars shipped in quantities to their dealers, and each one of them, of course, were painted in accurate colors. The dealers used to use them as a way to show off a particular car in a particular factory color. Well, an automaker that was serving Pontiac at that time was an outfit called MPC. That was Model Products Corporation. Well, I got a call one day from the guy who ran this outfit, MPC, Model Products Corporation. His name was George Totiff. He says, I just got a tip that they're putting a TV show together for the Monkees, and they're looking around to create a vehicle which they have already named the Monkey Mobile. I kind of thought that in view of the fact that the Pontiac GTO was kind of the swinging image of what was happening with the young folks in that particular time frame, I said, no way are we going to let that opportunity go. That's going to be a Pontiac GTO.
A lot of times a factory doesn't want their products to be as highly modified as the Monkeemobile became. How did you swing pitching that to the brass, saying, yeah, it's okay that we stretch this out and we do all these modifications. It'll still be a GTO. Were they receptive to that?
Well, that was the original idea. As a matter of fact, they were receptive enough that I even got the opportunity to work with some of the Pontiac stylists, and they roughed up a sketch, a kind of a really good-looking package that, was pretty highly modified in a kind of a performance-oriented way. It had a big blower sticking out of the hood, at the time, which was pretty popular and pretty much in vogue. And when we turned the cars over, after we put the deal together, and turned the cars over to the stylist by the name of Dean Jeffries, we also gave him this rendering that came out of Pontiac Styling.
How faithful was he to that rendering?
I'm going to give you a great big ho-ho on that one, because when we finally got around to seeing it, Dan, I got to tell you, it shocked everybody. It was so far off the rendering of what Pontiac had hoped this car would look like that it was almost kind of, in fact, it kind of got to be known around the Pontiac world, at least, at the factory, as Wanger's Folly, because this was the guy who got us into this mess, and look at that mess that they have created. And it wasn't what you would necessarily call a mess, but it certainly was a comic version, with one exception. It did have a very distinctive, very nicely styled front end that featured the split grille.
That was indeed the hallmark of the GTO. Thank you, Jim. I hope you'll come back and visit us again on It's All About the Car, and we appreciate your time.
I would certainly love to, and thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
God, I love that guy.
What an incredible gentleman of automotive trivia. And
the Godfather.
He knows everything. He is the Godfather.
He is a Godfather.
Another Godfather.
They're everywhere.
The Godfather GTO. Speaking of the Godfather GTO and the Monkeemobile, if you go to my website, and I'm going to keep pushing it, www.itsallaboutthecar.com. Go down there where it has my Facebook stuff, and you can see a picture of the Monkeemobile. And while you're there, you might as well like me. What the heck?
There you go. What the heck?
All righty. Hey, we've had our guest on hold for quite some time, and we want to bring him on. The owner of an Avanti, a beautiful Avanti, a blood red, looking mean, sounding meaner. Keith Wall, thank you for being on the program.
Hey, thanks, Dan.
Hey, Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Keith brought his car down to my little secluded abandoned parking lot and let me take the photos that are up there on my website. Did you get a chance to look at the photos, Keith?
Not yet, Dan. Hope you'll send me that link.
Oh, I will. It's great, and they are great. But it was like anywhere I point a camera at your car, it's beautiful.
And you did a nice job on the Thunderbird. Thanks a lot.
I
downloaded those.
Yes, you've got a lot of nice cars. That's what I was telling them earlier. It was hard to pick which one, but when you said Avanti, I said, oh, that's the one I want. So why did you decide you had to have an Avanti? I mean, you've got some really nice cars. Then all of a sudden, an Avanti.
I actually didn't start out with that car. I always, my dad was a kind of a car guy. We started off when we were like 5, 6 years old. He drove a Singer, and then one day that was not such a reliable car, and all of a sudden he traded it in and brought home a 1954 Jaguar XK120. So we grew up with that car. My brother and I actually wanted to try and buy that car back, but long story short, we knew the owner that he sold it to. Long story short, it proved not to be reliable. We were both young professionals and just didn't have the resources in terms of time and people that we knew, so we passed on it. I thought that just looking around and looking at cars, that the Studebakers were highly stylized cars, and I was really after a Golden Hawk. And I actually found a gentleman in Nebraska who had a 56, 57 Golden Hawk and a 55 Studebaker Speedster. So he had 55, 56, and 57.
Wow.
So I flew out to Nebraska with the intent to buy 3 cars. And at the time we were remodeling our house, I got in the car. These were literally cars in a barn. This guy was a farmer, and he had the cars in the barn. And they were barely running. One was not running at all. I worked with his mechanic to get it running. I'm looking at what I'd have to do to these 3 cars, and I'm going, how in the world am I going to pull this off? And it was just at the time of the Studebaker International meet in Nebraska, and so he said, if you're not going to buy them, I'm going to take them there. And, sure enough, he sold them because Studebaker people are sort of like people who eat Lay's potato chips. You can't have just one. Everybody I know who's got a Studebaker has multiples, and I just bought another Studebaker. There's just something about the history, the styling, the advancement of the vehicle that is just inspiring. So I became friendly with the president of our club, who went to a meet up in Sacramento, and I said, maybe I'd like to look for an Avanti. I started to read about the history, and I thought, this is a very interesting vehicle, and it has so much history and performance behind it that it became underappreciated. It's a real sleeper, and the styling by even today's standards was way ahead of its time. Little thing about the styling, I'm a big fan of architecture, Art Deco, highly stylized architecture, and Raymond Loewy was the industrial designer for Studebaker, who came back in the 50s and 60s. He was brought back in the 60s when Studebaker was imploding, and in 63 and 64 sales were declining. But Studebaker, should have given General Motors a lesson, because what they did is they kept a lot of their infrastructure of their vehicles year to year and changed just certain aspects to make new cars because they were always short on money. The Avanti runs on a Lark frame, and it's an X frame, a very sturdy frame, and it's a fiberglass vehicle. The deal about the Avanti was that Molded Fiberglass, who made the Corvettes at the same time, was with General Motors and Studebaker, and Molded Fiberglass came to General Motors and said, boys, it's either us or them. Who do you want to do business with? So the Avanti had so many orders that they could not fill that it broke the company in terms of its production. And it was only produced for 2 years. The Avanti was partnered with Andy Granatelli, who did speed runs at Bonneville and took a stock vehicle up to 170 miles an hour.
Actually, it was 171.
I knew he was going to.
I did my research.
I knew he was going to correct you. I knew you were in trouble the minute you said it.
Keith, we got 2 minutes left. Tell us what it's like to drive your Avanti. How many thumbs up do you get when you're driving down the road?
People have no idea what it is, so it's got interesting cachet from that point of view. Everybody loves the styling. Nobody really knows what it is.
Right.
Very few people are familiar with Studebaker. My new old 59-year-old 1953 Studebaker, somebody came up today and said, is that a foreign car?
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So do you go to car shows with your Avanti, Keith, and do you see other ones?
I participate in all of our Studebaker events, and I do go to El Cajon and La Mesa and some of the meets here. In 2 weeks, we're going to go to join the L.A. Studebaker Club and meet at the Peterson. I spent 6 months putting this car in drivable shape and drove it to the international meet in Phoenix. And so that was about a 1,500-mile trip, and the car performed stunningly well. And what you do with these cars is you drive them.
Well, it sounded like a top. It was beautiful. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to photograph it and giving us the opportunity to talk with you about your car.
And Dan, thank you for your invitation, and I wish you lots of luck. You got a great opportunity and a great show.
All righty, thank you. Next week, it's going to be a 1968 Mini Innocente.
Right here on All About the Cars on KCBQ AM 1170 Intelligent Talk Radio.
You've been running a long time. Oh, I guess I gotta put you flat feet.